Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk, where I play a video game and talk about something that's on my mind. Today's video game is the Ninja Warriors again. I talked about this a little bit on the making of my hitbox, well not making of, when I was showing off the hitbox for Super Nintendo. But this is a remake of the arcade game The Ninja Warriors for the Super Nintendo, which was just remade as remade for the Switch. This remake is called The Ninja Warriors again, and the remake of the remake is called The Ninja Warriors once again. So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about kind of beat 'em ups and kind of the reputation they have as sort of shallow throwaway games, and to some extent that kind of is owed to the origins in arcades. The easy way that they were to just kind of pick up and play through, and the repetitive action of most of your moveset is, you walk up to a guy, you press the punch button a bunch, and then that's how you beat everybody. I think that's a little unfair to. I think the relatively simple mechanics kind of belie some hidden depth in a lot of these games, and especially if you are trying to really actively clear the game without ever dying, the kind of tactics and stuff that you need to understand, and the control of space that you've got to work with to really master the game. There are arcade games that are deliberately designed to be kind of entertaining and easy to mash through. But if you actually want to beat them and understand them, there's a lot more nuance to it. This game is one that I kind of dismiss myself as kind of shallow. I didn't give it really much time until the remake came out, and I played that, and then I just kind of subsequently returned to this one. It's actually a pretty involved game with a decent moveset, a variety in moves for a lot of these characters. So there's really just 3 buttons, one of them that you're not going to use a lot. There's this attack button. Hitting people does a basic combo. You can do it standing or crouching for a different combo ender. And you see there's that meter at the bottom that builds up to having a super. Oops. Basically that'll go away if you get hit at any time while it's filling up, but once it's filled up you're fine. And then you can kind of just have basically a bomb to clear the screen. Oops. Oh shoot. At any moment. It also enables, here we go again. It also enables different combo enders that you can spend meter on, I believe. They're different for every character. I think this one is for Kunoichi. It's 4 attacks, and then the 5th one is you press up. You can also hold down the button to block. If you're blocking, you can do a back flip or front flip. If you, like in a lot of other beat 'em ups, if you walk right up to somebody, you grab them. Oh shoot! From there, you can either throw them forward, grab them, punch them in the stomach for a low knockdown, or oops. Oops. Throw the bomb. Or you can throw them up. Pressing down to jump will give you the slide here. That's good for kind of poking in and getting in quickly. There you go. You can also have a jump kick. The jump attack changes depending on if you are standing or moving. Let's just use the bomb. also, if you do the jump kick and hold the opposite direction while you hit somebody, you will flip kick to the other side and kick the other person on the other side. So, decent variety of moves. They add a lot more to it in the remake, but this is a pretty good base to start from. And you kind of get a lot out of it. So these normal enemies take one hit. You can kind of just obliterate them. And then the special enemies approach you in different ways and take more hits, usually 1 or 2 combos. And you have to kind of be careful about rounding them up into a space where you can kind of manage all of them. That's the big thing. You want to have most of them in front of you. You don't really want to have them attack you from behind, since you can only block in one direction. So you can use things like throwing backwards to knock people behind you. Oops. Or you can grab them, walk up, throw them to the other side. There you go. You can kind of hear when they're dead, because you hear the little voice clip like that. Good for confirming that you killed them. And a lot of the enemies their combos aren't actual, like, real combos. If they hit you the first 1 or 2 times, you can hold down the button and react to a block. Check it. There you go. There's that flip kick. So yeah, there's a lot of management of the enemies. This version, I guess most of the Ninja Warrior games, this version specifically, very much about managing crowds and directions of attacks. There's only really 2 planes that they can attack you from. So you kind of want to make their attacks more linear rather than, you know, multi-directional. Let's throw this robot. This robot can only be attacked from behind, or you can just grab them. Throw that bomb over there. There you go. Yeah, like I said, beat 'em ups, they do a lot of stuff with kind of space control, crowd control, and they often offer a lot of good ones anyway. Offer a lot larger moveset than you need to complete the game. So they give you options of how you want to deal with situations that not everybody needs, but really do add to the variety and replayability, because it's just incredibly fun to figure out how to style on people. One thing I like in this game specifically is a lot of the background objects, if you throw enemies into them, they will break, which is a really nice touch. So I've been kind of trying to think of ways to talk about the ways beat 'em ups interact with spaces and stuff. Just because, like shoot 'em ups, one of my other pet genres, they really have that reputation of being pretty simple. Especially if you're not somebody who's, you know, cares about scoring and things like that, you know, you just hold down the button and shoot everything, right? But there's usually some pretty interesting ways, and they work with the waves and enemy patterns, things like that, that make them a lot more interesting if you think about what's going on underneath. There we go. Oh, I think I might die here. Yeah, that's okay. That'll give me a chance to show off some of the other characters. But like I said, they don't really surface a lot of that depth. Like, a lot of people played stuff like Streets of Rage 2 and don't even know about half the moves and the different throws and positions you can do throws from. And you know, I think that's kind of by design. Like I said, it's there so you can beat the game just pushing a button with your friend. But if you want it, you can kind of figure out those more advanced moves. So I like Ninja here. Ninja's pretty cool. Instead, when you press the jump button, they do one of these. You can press it neutral. You can press an attack button to do one of these. Or you can, if you're holding down and forward, you'll do one of those. You jump. There you go. Oops. You can also dash and then, not that way. Oops. Let me take care of these guys first. You know, press down and jump, you'll do the jump kick. You can dash and then push punch. Go kick him. Got the guy here. Let's throw this here. There's that up throw right here. Pretty good. Break them over your knee. Throw them into each other. Real good stuff. Just 1, 2, 3. No, I was trying to do the combo there. So while the moveset might be like relatively simple compared to something like, you know, a fighting game or whatever, there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of things to explore and figure out where you can work in these moves. There you go. Ow. Especially if you want to beat the game without continuing, you're gonna have to use all these moves. Another thing I really want to shout out about this game is this is kind of like a cool game in like a line of great games that Natsume made on the Super Nintendo. This is the original Ninja Warriors game was credited to Taito since they made that, but this version was made by Natsume. As far as I can tell, it very much feels like one of their games. As far as I know, they've also worked on not only the Pocky and Rocky games, which are probably one of the better known ones. I'm pretty sure they did the Pocky and Rocky ones here. They also did some licensed Power Rangers games, the Fighting Edition and the Movie Edition. And you can kind of see some of the techniques that they use in this game, as far as like visual techniques and the ways they render certain things, specifically like light, and the sound effects that they use show up again in those. This guy's a lot easier to beat with Ninja than Kunoichi. I gotta grab him. There you go. Yeah, what else? Yeah, the Power Rangers Fighting Edition with the fighting game. Oh yeah, the Gundam Wing Endless Duel game, which they also built on. A lot of those, their main credits on the title screen are to the publishers like Bandai, who did like most of the licensing for those properties. But like, they're just really solid, good action games. I believe they did GS Mikami too, as well. I mean, Ghost Sweeper Mikami, which is like a really cool action game that I spent a lot of time last year playing and really enjoyed. And you can kind of see the way they, like, specifically the way they use like transparency, explosions, and color cycling to like simulate lighting effects. And it's a little bit weird because like it's hard to find info on developers of this era, especially since I think especially in Japan, they became kind of notorious for not either not crediting people or not crediting them with the real name so that they wouldn't be stolen by other studios and things like that. So it's really hard to confirm certain details about games, which is kind of infuriating. But as far as I can tell, if the credits on like Moby Games are correct, a lot of this same staff, you know, kind of repeatedly worked on all those licensed properties and did pretty admirable job with the games that they built. Like they made a lot of really good action games that they don't really get credit for. Wild Guns is another one, which I think is sort of kind of like original property, which also was one of the first ones to get a remake. Specifically, like the Ninja Warriors once again and Wild Guns Reloaded were built by some of the same teams that worked on this, you know, Power Rangers, all that stuff, and it kind of brought back a lot of the same staff to do, you know, enhanced pixel art and add new characters and versions, which is really interesting. And what they thought, you know, they wanted to improve and the touches they brought to that, because it's not often that you get to like revisit something that you worked on like that long ago. And usually if they do a remake or remaster of something like that, a revival, they don't usually have the same staff, so it kind of becomes like a coin toss about the quality of it. But those remakes have been pretty good. Natsumi's been pretty good about them. I don't think a lot of people play them because those aren't what people those aren't what expensive games look like to people. Even though I'm sure it took like a lot of labor and talent to create, and because they're niche games, they end up like shoot 'em ups. You kind of end up in a spot where, since you're appealing to a niche audience, your baseline starting price is like much more expensive than a lot of other games. So you know, these are like $30 remakes of games that, well, you know, you can beat in like an hour if you really want to. And, like, you can kind of talk about replay value and whatever. I'm one of those people who kind of like enjoys that experience enough that if I play for just a couple hours, like, kind of feel like I got my money's worth. I know that's a hard sell for a lot of people, but I usually do also play for like several hours, do several playthroughs. The appeal is kind of in mastering the game rather than just beating it, which is I guess that's kind of weird or old school mentality in my mind that I generally don't share with a lot of stuff. It's just like a very specific styles of action game, ones that I'll return to. So I kind of prefer having like a short, really intense action game to a long one, something that I can return to, you know, multiple times. And I know that's like not common, but yeah, it's hard to know what to say about this game because I just kind of enjoy playing it. And I enjoy kind of seeing like the ludicrous amount of detail and the style they got into what are some really basic kind of controls and movement. Like, there's a lot of new beat 'em ups, and because of the like kind of like technological advances and like controllers and stuff, ways we were used to interacting with controllers, they get to they get to put like a lot more complexity in terms of the interactions you can actually have. You know, a lot of like stats and adding new complicated moves and things like that. You know, you can feel free to add. Oh, this isn't going well. Let's see if we can just walk up. Ah, I'm dead. You know, you can like put in like quarter circles and fighting, like legit fighting game movements and stuff like that. The way games like Vanilleware's games do, or I'm trying to think of another one, like Guardian Heroes, that kind of game does. But it's pretty cool to see how much complexity they get out of what is essentially a 2-button control scheme, right? So Kamitachi here cannot grab people, which is a little weird. I like being able to grab people because you can kind of throw them, and it helps you control the space more interestingly. They get a bunch of different other moves instead. And they're kind of like really fast. Like that wasn't actually a grab, it's like part of the combo, I think. So if you walk up to them, they just walk past. I'm not actually sure how that... Oh, cool. Yeah, so that's one of those combos that you can do while you're powered up. There you go. Oops. Yeah, the sound those ninjas make when they get hurt is very similar to one of the sounds that they use in Go Super Mikami. Ah, come on, man. Let me get that. And you can kind of tell, because games like this are so basic, you can kind of tell what their priorities are in the ways that they expect you to interact. Like the... Oops. Like the meter down there kind of tells you... Oops. That it wants you to kind of carry that momentum without getting hit, and the like long knockdowns and stuff like that do the same. There's like a really big emphasis in this game on like momentum and carrying that momentum forward. Yeah, momentum, positioning, and then just like tactical choice of which move you're gonna follow up with, and how that spaces out enemies. This game is like really good. I could kind of just play it forever. I think I'll play the second stage, and whether I win or lose it, I think it's time to move on. Yeah, I'm not sure. At some point I do want to just write out some formal thoughts on beat-em-ups. There was a piece a while back on kind of like the perceived shallowness of like arcade beat 'em ups and stuff. And specifically talking about how little balance changes can change a lot about a game. It was specifically on Streets of Rage versus Bare Knuckle 3, the Japanese version of Streets of Rage, and how small balance changes kind of affected that game. How do you... So there was like... That was like a weird... Okay. Not weird. I believe it's by Con Space Swings, who wrote about it. They had some interesting approaches to categorizing this kind of genre. For the most part, like, they get to a lot of the things that I'm talking about here, though I'm not quite as in-depth on certain topics that as I'd like to get. So I'm just trying to think of a way to kind of like formalize and visualize the ideas of brawlers. Just a lot of games are kind of fundamentally about controlling space. Especially action games. Fighting games, definitely, things like that. Okay, this one's gonna be a little harder, probably. Oh, get me out! Get off me! And the way specific beat 'em ups kind of play into how you control space is pretty interesting, and kind of defines a lot about what makes a good and bad beat 'em up. Because there's plenty of bad beat 'em ups. Not just because the game has a variety of moves in its arsenal and stuff like that, doesn't make it a good beat 'em up. Because if it doesn't give you anything interesting to do with it, there's not really a point. And then there's like, because they're so simple again, a lot of those things go back to, you know, space control, and then also pacing. Like, a thing that I really love about these Ninja Warriors remakes is they are immaculately paced. It always feels like there's just the right amount of things going on at any given time, with enough breaks. They throw in, the patterns are throw in just enough. Oops. Weak enemies and strong enemies to kind of let you go wild, but also give you something to stomp on for a couple hits. Which is really cool. And I think a lot of lesser beat 'em ups, especially modern ones, end up trying to pad out their playtime by like adding RPG elements and stuff like that, and that makes it more recognizable as something you could see as a modern video game, and maybe that works for some people, but for me it just makes the game into a chore that like introduces a lot of grind. And like, I fundamentally don't think that games with mechanics this simple, I mean, they're games you can play forever, but I don't want a session of them to take me 5 hours, right? I want to play 5 one-hour sessions rather than 1 5-hour session, and a lot of games take 1 hour beat 'em ups and turn them into 5-hour beat 'em ups by doing that. And maybe that works a little bit better for what people expect from a modern video game, or what they want to pay for, I guess. But it makes a worse game. Like, imagine making a 5-hour light gun game. Nobody wants to play that, right? A lot of arcade games, especially For me, you know, an hour is like the maximum amount of time I want to play something, because not only because they're simple, but because they're very intense. And when I play arcade games, I'm seeking out that intensity, but it's also an intensity that's going to wear me down if I'm exposed to it for several hours at a time. So, you know, I want it in those short sessions, right? That's kind of my thought on it. Yeah, anyway, let's see if we can make it to this boss again and then call it quits. And hopefully you kind of enjoyed taking a look at this game. This isn't a game that people talk about a lot or anything like that. I bet there's a group of people who are really into these specific games, but you know, I love kind of. This is one of those games that I was very happy to find, to retroactively find. I find like there's a lot of, in the Super Nintendo particularly, there's a lot of really cool games that don't really get their due because they're not, I don't know, fucking Super Mario World level of exciting game. There's like a lot of really cool mid-tier games, especially before you get to like the PS3 era or whatever. And like I really just love going back to what feels like a really thoroughly explored and researched and documented era of games that people always talk about, and just finding completely new stuff that I'd never heard of before, or like really unappreciated. And like this is definitely one of them. Get the fuck out of here. You can really feel the difference between the characters in this game. Yeah, I don't know. This game's fucking great. The Ninja Warriors, again, once again, that is the title. The Ninja Warriors again, not to be confused with The Ninja Warriors or The Ninja Warriors once again. Fantastic game. Everybody, go play it on your emulator. Get some Cyborg Ninja action. Alright, everybody. Peace.